fuck am I watching right now?
Back on Patreon again. And the best thing about this is we didn't warn the freeloaders at all, because I think you told them at the end of the free episode that we were going to be back. Like we always do. We always lose track of it. You know what I'm saying?
They know better by now. They just go, sure you will.
Yeah. Sure you will, buddy. Sure you will.
Yeah.
Well, Kristen helped us out in the video version on YouTube. I think when you said that, when you were like, we'll be back next week, and then I think the words come up and it's like, actually, no, we won't. Next week's Patreon or something like that.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there's not so much you can do in post with podcast, in the podcast realm. You know, I guess I could add like a little echoey voice or pause it or something and add that stuff in there. But I had already finalized the episode by the time I figured out that we were going to be on Patreon this week. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
You know,
what are you going to do?
Consistent.
It's gone and there's nothing you can do about it.
That's right. That's right. Much like Woodstock 99, man. It happened. It was crazy. And now we can talk about the craziness that happened. I wasn't even aware of this at all.
Right. I didn't know I didn't know they rebooted it and it was a disaster. I was 12 years old at the time, which was almost old enough to be there and get served alcohol and get, you know, probably a concussion and almost get trampled and everything else.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. Have a heat stroke.
12-year-old kid. I mean, there were kids there that were young as 14 for sure.
Yeah.
So
well, the one girl that was focused in the docuseries, you said she was, like you said, she was 14.
Yes.
At the time. And just getting
and
groped by a bunch of fucking creeps and everything else. I don't think she loved that part so much, but yeah, she loved the experience of being there and said she would do it again in a heartbeat. It was definitely seemed like it was something that if you were there, you were never going to forget.
It's like after the fact, though, it's easy to say that you would do it again. But I mean, go back to the conditions that you were living in for those 3 days, and then you take away the fact that you're completely off your rocker. Like if there wasn't so much drugs and alcohol going around, nobody would have.
All's well that ends well, right? I mean, like there's people that have near-death experiences where they got stranded somewhere, they almost died, and then they were like, "I would do it again." It's like, yeah, but in the moment, you wanted the fuck out of there.
Would you really? Like if we were guaranteed to throw you right back in the same situation, you would go back?
But you don't. Assuming you don't know whether it's going to go as well for you, like it could go poorly. You don't know the outcome.
We know how. But you and I both know how these situations typically go, right? I mean, I've been in my share of parties, and I've been around a lot of people who experiment with different types of drugs, and everybody has a better feeling and a better view of it when it's over. Yeah. They never remember what they've gone through. It's just like I've had friends that have been through the military, and they're like, "Bro, boot camp was like the best time of my life." Well, then go back.
Right?
Oh no, bro, I never went through. Well, then which is it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're over romanticizing it.
Yeah.
Which a lot of over romanticizing happened in Woodstock 99, because there were people talking about, like this one girl in particular on day one, right? She's going to bed and she's like, my mouth was full of sores, right? Mm-hmm. She's like, I had no saliva, my mouth was all full of sores. She had trench mouth.
Yeah.
And that's a good time. Like, you want trench mouth? I don't want trench anything.
You want to be drinking dookie water for 3 days straight?
No. Bro, if there's no clean water, I'm out of there.
Yeah, it was either dookie water or you pay $4 a bottle for water and wait in line all day for that. And the $4 in 1999. So that's like $20 for a bottle of water in today's economy.
Yes. That's a fucking ripoff.
Yeah. And it just kept going up as the days progressed. It became very clear what this whole festival was about. It was not about peace and love. It was about dollars is what it was about.
Money.
And profits. Yeah.
Money.
So.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was just a cluster. It was a clusterfuck of bad ideas, man. The lineup, like the audience, the amenities.
This is like that fire festival thing. Remember the documentary about that? If it actually happened, like this is the way it would have turned out.
No doubt, with just a little bit of planning.
Yeah.
And then you bring fire into the equation on the last day. Good idea.
God.
Good idea.
You could go into the conspiracy about that, and like, did they want that for the controversy, as they kind of mentioned at the end of it? But let's start from the beginning and get into it. Let's hear your intro. I heard you got something pretty interesting in the works for this one.
Yeah, man, let's do it.
So let's do it.
Looks like an absolute war about the he said, she said bullshit.
We woke up one morning, there was no damn water for like half a day.
It's all about the he said, she said bullshit.
Everybody was bumming, it was hot as hell.
It's all about the he said, she said bullshit.
Like no water, man. It was like they're trying to kill us in here.
It's all about the he said, she said bullshit. Just one of those days you wanna wake up and everything is fucked and everybody sucks.
There's a lot of frustration about $10 burritos, you know, and $5 hot dogs, things like that.
You don't really know why, but you wanna justify ripping someone's head off.
Say, alright, the crowd's gonna calm down, and then they have revisionist machine come
No
out.
human contact, and if you interact, your life is on contract.
Alright, you guys gotta calm down, and then Metallica come out.
Your best to stay away, motherfucker. Cause I'm telling you now, it's just one of those days.
You can't do that, there's too many crazy people around here on drugs.
It's just one of those. It's all about the he said, she said bullshit.
I was just like, wow, man.
It's all about the he said, she said bullshit.
Propane tanks are exploding. That's ridiculous.
It's all about the he said, she said
I came here to watch music. I didn't come here to fear for my life.
It's all about the he said, she said bullshit.
I was just like, wow, man.
I think you better quit, let that shit slip, or you'll be leaving here with a fat lip. Cause it's all about the he said, she said bullshit. I think you better quit talking that shit. Cause I'm telling you now, it's just one of those days. It's just one of those. It's all about the he said, she said bullshit.
I got this tattoo about Thursday night around 12:30.
It's all about the he said, she said bullshit.
I got here something to remember it by.
It's all about the he said, she said
Now it should
bullshit.
say Woodstock Riot 99.
It's all about the he said, she said bullshit. It's all about the he said, she said bullshit. It's all about the he said, she said
I
bullshit.
was just like, wow, man.
It's all about the he said, she said bullshit.
All right, for this week's episode, a Patreon exclusive. You know, we like to do things a little bit more differently on Patreon. We like to stray away from the main trail a little bit when we do Patreon because we know you guys will go with us and
That's right.
go down the woods and through the weeds a little bit. And so this one isn't a serial killer or even a crime per se. Although there was many crimes committed during the course of this 3-day festival that occurred 22 years ago. We are doing.
About to say it is not without crime.
Oh, there's plenty of crime to discuss in this one. But we're discussing the 3-part docuseries that just got posted on Netflix called Trainwreck Woodstock 99. So we're going to discuss Woodstock 99. They tried to reboot it 30 years after the fact. And it was, in fact, a train wreck. And because it was clearly about profit, it was profit stock and strayed completely away from what the whole idea of the original Woodstock was, which was peace and love, anti-war, counterculture, and was a beautiful thing back in 1969. And in 1999, it was the era of basically exploiting the music industry for as much dollars as you could get. It was the boy band era. A lot of young people were angry about the direction that music had gone because of this, because so much money and business and bigwigs had gotten involved in the industry and just kind of ruined it.
Yes.
And
think early days of MTV, think like
Britney
VH1
Spears
and all that. It's like What was the show that came on in the middle of the day with Carson Daly?
TRL, Total Request Live.
TRL, yes.
Yeah, I used to watch it every day after school, as many did. Kids of the 90s did.
Yes, TRL, dude. I remember it's that time. If you imagine that, it's just everything was publicized. Every single musical guest they had on TRL was pushing something else.
It was kind of like social media before social media, right? Like, it had the same vibes to it, the same kind of dirty vibes. Or it was just anything for attention type of thing.
Nothing was too cheap.
Yes.
Nothing was too cheap for MTV at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you see a lot of this. A lot of people were upset, like I said, about the direction that music had gone, and it was all about money and not about the art anymore. And a lot of that anger came out during the course of this 3-day festival.
And then you throw in new metal, like Limp Bizkit, Korn.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. We're going to talk a lot about Limp Bizkit and the hot dog flavored water, baby.
Oh, Fred.
Or we should say the shit flavored water, which is what everyone was drinking at this festival for 3 days.
Oh.
Woo, they had some irrigation issues.
Yes, they did. They had no clean drinking water there. None of the water
they
tested
just had
was good.
fountains of water that had shit in it just spraying all over everyone, and everyone's like
Everybody's like brushing their teeth with it. They're like, this is great.
Oh my god, dude.
Washing their hair. It's good to get clean.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So yeah, let's start out with, we like to start with the origin of things. So let's talk a little bit about the original Woodstock, the beautiful thing that was the original Woodstock in 1969. I mean, granted, there was some ugly things. There were a lot of people that there was thousands of people that were needed medical treatment for drug overdose and things like that.
Right.
But very little violence. I don't recall any like out of control fires or, buildings being torn down or anything along those lines. Just a lot of people in fields, high as shit, spinning around in dresses.
Right. And Woodstock 99, not Woodstock 99, but Woodstock 69, they had that ability because they were in fields. They were in a natural environment.
Not
right?
on a fucking tarmac.
Not on a tarmac, on concrete. Like,
yeah.
Oh my God, dude. What's so natural and loving and earthy about a fucking tarmac?
100%.
Yeah. They just didn't want people getting in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was not entirely about profit. In fact, they shut down. They almost shut down the original Woodstock because it was making no money because of the cost of. They underestimated the cost of food and drinks for everyone. They actually cared that people were well hydrated and fed, unlike Woodstock '99, where they're like, "Fuck you! You can pay $12 for a fucking corn dog, or you can starve. We don't give a shit."
Yeah.
Water is $10 a bottle, and you have to wait in line, or you can go drink some Dookie water over there, deal with it. Meanwhile, the whole creator area, the musician area, they were just treated like kings, of course, because the two guys running this festival in '99 were scumbags, and we'll talk plenty about that. But back to '69.
It has to be.
So the original Woodstock in 1969 was clearly like an anti-war. It had so much. It was young people that were pissed off about the direction of the country and the world. They were anti-war. There was flower power, counterculture. It was held on a farm in Bethel, New York, near Woodstock, a town of Woodstock, which is where it's got its name from. There was 400,000 people in attendance at the original Woodstock, which actually dwarfs the Woodstock in '99, even though our total population had grown so much in 30 years. It's crazy to think how big the original one was. But that was because there was nothing to do in '69.
That's
true. Of course you were going to go.
And that speaks volumes, though, to so many excuses that the promoters of Woodstock 99 put up. They're like, oh, it's 200,000 people. Like, what do you expect? You're going to have some bad apples. Well, it's like Woodstock 69 had double this.
Yeah.
But, culture was different. Music was different. Your lineup of artists was very, very different.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the biggest mistakes they made in 99.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk plenty about that. But, man, the lineup of artists, what did you expect?
Yeah. Clearly, this was all about money. It was a money-making endeavor for the creators of this reboot in '99, because you can just look at the list of artists, and all they did was pick the biggest artists at the time, which many of which were, like you said, new metal bands like Korn and Limp Bizkit, and they completely go against the whole concept of what the original Woodstock was. They're angry bands that are screaming about violence and things like that, and fuck the system and all that. I guess there was a counterculture vibe to Limp Bizkit in a sense, just in a different way, but they were very fuck the music industry and fucking sync and all that stuff, which I guess you could look at it like it was counterculture, and I get how they could connect those things, but
there's just so much anger in it. It's just so much anger in Limp Bizkit, and so many of those. I have the full list here of people that performed. It's pretty insane.
In 1969?
No, in 99.
Oh. Okay, well, in 69, we had a lineup that included Jimi Hendrix, obviously, Janis Joplin, Santana, The Who, Grateful Dead. A lot of, like you said, the lineup was very different vibes. These bands were, much of their music was about inclusivity and, love, and a much different vibe, much less angry. The art of music,
It's pretty crazy. Like, I'm looking at this list of acts for 99, and it's kind of crazy that they only showed so many. They only showed the ones that they
did. You didn't even
because
see much of Metallica, right? Which is one of the biggest bands in the world.
Metallica was there
30 years.
Dude, Godsmack was there.
Yep.
Godsmack was huge.
Creed
in the early
which is
2000s.
it's a weird one, right? Singing about God up there in front of all these angry fucking kids.
No. Godsmack's not a Christian band.
Creed.
Oh,
Creed was at Woodstock '99, and it's with arms wide open, burn this building down.
Right. Maybe they needed more Creed and less freaking Metallica.
What's funny is they was such a ugly mix though. Like you had like Limp Bizkit go on and then Jewel coming on. You know, it's just like, what the fuck? Are you guys
the combination was too mixed up.
Yeah.
And you had Rage Against the Machine. Rage Against the Machine was there too.
Yeah.
I'd like to see. Oh, Dave Matthews was there. Like,
see what I'm saying?
So mixed.
Then you had James Brown and Willie Nelson mixed in too. They took the biggest artists that they could possibly book, and they didn't think about anything else. All the ancillary effects of that, you know.
Dude, ICP was there.
Oh my God! Insane Clown
Did you know
Posse.
that?
All the Juggalos were there.
Yes,
that was asking
ICP
for trouble.
was there.
Because you know
also,
what? Those fans of that band, they just don't have any tolerance for other bands or other like fans of bands. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like, Juggalos or die. Like, fuck all you.
Yeah. ICP demands a lot of commitment from their fans, apparently.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, their fans, and then their fans turn around and they feel like ICP is like very underappreciated. They're like, you don't understand it, bro. You don't understand where they're coming from. Like, those are just analogies. They don't really mean kill babies. Like, it's just, I'm like, I don't know, man. Right. I don't think everyone's interpreting it that way. I don't know. It was just shock music, you know? There was a lot of shock culture in music at the time.
You know, now that I think about it, though, I think they could have made this whole thing work, even with the lineup that they had they just provided the proper amenities. And that was the one thing that the older woman who had been an organizer at the original Woodstock, who had provided food and stuff for the original Woodstock, that was a part of prepping this event in '99 as well. She knew right away when she saw all the trash everywhere. It was like, if you don't, there was a quote from a security officer, I have it written down here, who was a part of this docuseries, and where was it?
Yeah, he's just talking about having everything there. I agree.
He basically said, if the venue shows that they don't care, then why should you care as an attendee? Yes. You know?
Yeah. If you feel like you're not cared about, your health, your sanitation is not cared about, then they're gonna lose shit. Especially if you're getting more hungry, you're getting thirsty, you're getting hot. It's hot as fuck out there on that tarmac. Like you said, it was basically a military base.
Yeah, so let's go through that whole thing. We kind of touched on the original Woodstock, what it was. Mostly a beautiful thing. Obviously, there was a lot of people that got too messed up on drugs, which is gonna happen. But as long as you have
a lot less cameras there too.
Yes,
we had, you know.
But dude, there's plenty of footage of like fields with people, like thousands and thousands of people, and the amount of trash and litter was a 100th less than what we see. It was basically a war zone at Woodstock '99. So in 1999, you know, one of the original kind of founder guy from Woodstock '69, Michael Lang, decided, well, first we can't skip over '94, which was also a train wreck. They tried to reboot Woodstock in '94. It was kind of short lived. The rain washed everything out, turned everything to muck, and it was, you know, basically over before it began.
And it wasn't secure, so people were like cutting the fence, getting in. Half of the attendees in '94 were there for free, so they obviously weren't planned for. So they didn't have the right amenities for the people then either. They didn't have enough food. They didn't have enough water. They didn't have enough restrooms. So, you know, '94 was a clusterfuck too, but they thought it was because, well, so many people showed up that we didn't plan for. So in '99, they decided... And it's just my opinion.
In '99, they decided the only thing we'll change is that we'll make bigger walls around the outside, and we'll just leave everything else the same.
That's what I'm saying. Their biggest concern was like, we can't have anyone experiencing this for free.
Exactly. We've got to milk every penny out of these motherfuckers.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so that is why they had it. Like I was talking to my wife while we were watching it, and I was like, they would have had this shit at an empty prison if they had one. Like, don't play.
Oh, no.
Y'all did not give a fuck about the environment. You just wanted a place that was so secure that people couldn't get in without paying.
Yep. And that, I mean, the people that were attending knew that too. I mean, you show up and you got these massive walls. On the outside, I'm sure they weren't painted, what did they call it? The flower wall or the peace wall? To kind of like soften the blow of having these massive walls around the outside of the venue. They painted them with all kinds of murals with peace signs and shit like that, while simultaneously booking Korn and Limp Bizkit and everything else.
Metallica.
The dichotomy of that is just
Rage
hilarious.
Against the Machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't add up.
Yeah.
It doesn't add up at all.
So Michael Lang, getting a bit older at this point, having been a part of organizing the original Woodstock in business with a guy named John Schur, who was another organizer who was just all about money. You could tell he was a businessman to the max. Even when he's doing his interview for the docuseries Trainwreck, he's clearly in like a high-rise business office. Like you could see like he's in a skyscraper with his business suit and a giant like conference table. He's just a business asshole. And he took that approach to Woodstock 99 and didn't give a shit about the art or the original festival and the name of Woodstock. You just utilized that name to get as many people to come as he could. It's kind of like when there's a great film and then someone sells the rights to it and some asshole comes along. It's like, we got the name. We don't give a shit about the quality of the movie. We're just going to make a sequel that's trash. And we know a certain number of people will see it because they love the first one.
I feel like a lot of the early Marvel movies were like that. They're like, it's called the Hulk. People are going to come see it. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, exactly. That's what this was. And so it was clearly from the jump all about money. The biggest thing they cared about, as we mentioned, was the walls around the outside, not allowing people to attend for free. And they chose a site which was so different than the original Woodstock, which was, rolling green hills of farmland. They chose an air base, which is so counter to the whole concept. Like they mentioned, it's a military industrial complex at work right here. You look around, it's just these massive aircraft hangars, military equipment. They chose Griffiths Air Base in Rome, New York, which is like a defunct air base, which is a perfect site because it had tons of space and easy to secure the area around the outside. It already had buildings in place, which they could set up stages at. And then they had a rave hangar for raves. Yeah.
That just went on 24 hours a day, 24-hour raves going on.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. So you have these two guys organizing, and their number one motivation is profits, and they have a lineup that includes Kid Rock, Limp Bizkit, Korn, Bush, DMX, Metallica, Jewel, Rage Against the Machine, Creed, Godsmack, Sheryl Crow, The Offspring, and they open up the festival. And this is a bad omen from the jump. James Brown almost didn't take the stage because they had only paid him half of his money, and he didn't play around with that. He was a guy who wanted upfront payment for his shows, and they refused to do it because John Schur was trying to rip him off, the businessman, and he basically called his bluff and had him backstage. And James Brown's manager is saying he's not going on stage until you pay him the rest of his money, and he's basically called his bluff and said, all right, well, we already have 250,000 people here, so if he doesn't go on, he doesn't go on. And James Brown ultimately went on without his full payment, and I'm pretty sure John Schur never paid him the rest. I hope that if that's the case, that James Brown sued the fuck out of him and got even more.
I hope so. But also, John Schur, as much as I hate this dude after this documentary, he did make a great point. He's like, James Brown noticed that the time. He noticed the event.
The gravity of this situation.
He knew this was going to be historical either way. And John Schur and Michael Lang, even though they'll never admit it, they felt the same way. They were like, we don't care if this is a train wreck because either way, it's historical.
Yeah.
It's history, and it's going to make a lot of money regardless. Regardless. So they didn't care. When they saw a 250,000 people there, they're like, this is done. We're done. We're going to succeed.
That being said,
now.
I can only imagine the amount of losses they had, though, afterwards. I wonder what their ultimate profit margin was when you consider the many years of litigation that must have taken place following this.
Lawsuits.
With the amount of young girls who were raped, taken advantage of, with the amount of people that were injured because of their poor planning, their lack of security, just overall not caring, and the amount of people who had heat strokes, the amount of people who probably died just because there was not enough water, there was such poor amenities provided, no shade. Right. Like, how do you not have like big shades everywhere? Like, people are fucking hiding underneath signs and shit.
Yeah, dude. It looked like it looked like freaking Naked City in Vegas. Like, people were tearing up cardboard boxes and building structures out of them to lay under. Like, it was insane, dude. Yeah. But I mean, what would you do? You couldn't get out of the sun.
That's what I'm saying. I can only imagine the amount of lawsuits that followed this whole thing.
It's like, what are you going to do? Go sit in a porta potty and fucking breathe in human feces? And it's probably even hotter in there.
Oh,
you know how porta potties are.
Not sitting in there. Did you see like the 2 inches of fucking muck at the bottom of those things? And
bro, I don't understand how somebody can go into a porta john and it's overflowing and be like, I'm just gonna use it anyway.
Right. No way.
I just no way, bro. I'll go piss or shit in the middle of a field.
Yeah.
Before I do that.
100%.
I'm just like, but apparently they did not let it deter them. But of course, most of the people there were highly intoxicated. They probably didn't even notice. Who knows?
At one point they broke a water pipe and there was water flowing all around the porta potties, and it was quote unquote mud, and everyone that knew anything was clearly they were like diving and sliding around in shit for fun.
God.
That'll build up your immune system. COVID stood no chance with anybody that attended this thing.
Right. How many people were sliding around going like, this is just like 94?
Right.
It's like, nah, actually 94 actually was mud.
Real mud. Yeah.
This is not so much mud.
Yeah.
You're sliding around in fertilizer, my friend.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
So, yeah, James Brown opened up the day one, Friday of the festival. Was, I think if you're going to go to any day, that was the day to go. It just got progressively worse from there. Day one there was some bumps, but it was fairly smooth.
Yeah.
But by day two, everybody partied so hard day one. They had beer gardens, quote unquote, basically where just everyone was doing beer bongs, and it was a bunch of frat boys, dude. Like it was like 99% white dudes at this thing, it seemed like.
Yeah. You know what? But it was probably
brown
because
person the entire series.
No, that wasn't working security.
Yeah, right.
But I think it's because of the pricing. Honestly, it's the pricing that really limited the people that could come. That's why you had like all these college frat boys showing up, because you know they're the ones that could afford it. You know, seriously, it's what it seemed like.
Yeah, and also the lineup.
Bullshit.
It was, the lineup was,
and the lineup. Yeah, you have to understand. Now you can look at the full lineup. There were a shit ton of different bands there. Like I say, the Roots were there from Jimmy Fallon's show. The Roots.
Shit.
Yes, George Clinton and the P-Funk All-Stars were there. So there was other types of Sugar Daddy was there. Like there's a lot of people there that were, that were different.
John was there.
Different type. Wyclef Jean, yeah, but he went nuts.
Yeah, he was fucking telling them to throw bottles at him and shit. I was like,
he was like trying to play the national anthem on guitar, and it sounded like shit.
He was doing the Hendrix
and then
thing. Remember, he was trying to emulate Hendrix, which you just don't do that because you can't.
Don't do that.
That's like I'm going to emulate Michael Jordan. Like, you're probably just going to look like a shitty version of him. Is what you're going to do.
Don't. Especially if you can't play. Like if it's like John Mayer or somebody, let's hear Jimi Hendrix rendition of the national anthem. But Wyclef Jean, nah, bro. Like that's like when Lil Wayne took that guitar to that one concert and was like,
yeah,
he's just playing like random shit because he just thinks it will fit in. It's like, no, man. I know they make it look easy, but it's not that easy.
Right. Stay in your lane.
But yeah,
you're a front man.
Yeah, stay in your lane. Just go up there. Yeah, do your shit, man. Yeah. Your shit is fine.
We have to talk about the pay-per-view aspect of this, which just made the whole thing even crazier.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, was it MTV that did the pay-per-view? Was it MTV?
Yes.
They were running this pay-per-view thing, and it was very much,
yes.
You know what it reminded me of was Spring Break. Remember how big Spring Break was on MTV back in the day? And it was basically like the original Jerry Springer show, or it was I guess it was the same era. There was probably running simultaneously. On one channel, you had Jerry Springer with little people going at it with sex workers fighting each other and shit. And then on the other channel, you had Spring Break, just girls showing their tits and asses shaking on the television.
Yeah, that's pretty much what this was.
Yeah, that's what they were trying to make it as extreme as possible. And you were paying $65 for the full 3 days to watch this on television if you couldn't make it. And the feed for pay-per-view was just all the most explicit aspects of this thing, which there was plenty of it to go around. I mean, they didn't have to look far. There was naked people everywhere, all over Woodstock 99. People getting body paint done, and people basically having sex out in the open, drugs being done out in the open. Yeah, just anywhere you looked, there was something, and they were focusing on all of that. They were focusing on what's the most extreme shit we can get people to do.
And then what happens when you put cameras in front of people? They're going to show out.
They're going to perform.
They're going to perform. It's like, it's just natural. The more you're on camera, you feel that pressure. Yeah. You feel that moment. and you feel like you need to do something.
It was the frat boy that was a prime example of that, where he's like, I told you I'd get on fucking TV. He starts smashing his head on something.
Oh my God. Yeah. He starts smashing his head on like this wooden board or something.
Yeah.
I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Anything for attention, right?
This might be your last time on TV, buddy.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yep.
Yikes. I know. I was thinking to myself when I was watching that scene, I was like, I'd love to see that guy watching this 20 years later. I would just love to be in the same room with this guy. Like, that's you?
He's got grandkids now and shit.
That's you? That's you, Ralph?
Right.
Wow. Impressive.
Probably still proud of it. That was probably his shining moment in life. He's probably already had the VHS and shown everybody 100 times.
Right. He's probably on the cover.
Yeah, right. So day one rounded out with Korn, which that started to kind of turn the tides and make everybody nervous. All the minimal security. Let's talk about the security for a minute.
Okay.
I mean, if you could call it security, it was basically that was the one thing that they tried to. There was these little sprinklings of like trying to do it the way they did it in the original Woodstock. They didn't want this vibe of like a bunch of big hulked out security guys with guns on their hip. They brought in a bunch of teenagers, paid them $500 each, gave them no training, no sort of defense, no weapons or anything like that. Gave them a fucking yellow shirt and we're like, all right, go in there. And they were 18-year-old kids who basically half of them just turned into the crowd. They were taking their shirts off and like, fuck this thing. Like, why beat them? Right? Why if you can't beat them, join them.
Well, they had nothing on them.
They were ill-equipped.
To sign up. Yeah, when you sign up to work security, sign up. Mm-hmm. I mean, like you said, it's just they basically give you a shirt. It's like, how tall are you? Yeah, you look good. Here, have a shirt.
Here's $500. Yep.
Yeah, they probably didn't even know their names.
Yeah, the one kid was talking about how he had an extra shirt and he sold the shirt on his back for $400 to someone because he was lying to him and telling him all these things that I'll get you backstage and all this shit.
Yeah,
right, I got $400. I got another shirt in my backpack. What do I care? That's the security that was working these 200,000 people.
Oh my God!
Trying to. I'm truly amazed that none of the artists got seriously hurt. I really am.
Me too.
Like it was so dangerous for them, especially like the situation that Fatboy Slim got in, where the crowd, that was like the point where the crowd was at the peak, like angry rage and like unsettled, and like he goes on and then they cut his set midway through because of the van driving through, which we'll talk about all this. But like,
and then they got
the fact
mad
that
him.
Stage didn't get stormed and he didn't get like ripped apart is pretty crazy. Like, because they kept showing the line of security that was like protecting the stage, and it was like 8 guys, and you have this massive sea of people. Yeah,
they could get overrun so easily.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that a lot of these big headlining acts, they showed up with their own security. I hope, right? They had their own bodyguards at least. I would. Ain't no way I'm going somewhere with 250,000 people and not bringing some armed people of my own.
Yeah, you know what? Some of the crowd probably would have got shot if they did that, because then you're right. I bet you the private security for these massive artists would have came on and at all costs protected their artist. And they were probably packing heat.
Yeah, James Brown showed up with an entourage, bro. Let's not get it twisted.
You ain't getting to him, dude.
No. So, I mean... And that's the same way with a lot of these. Metallica, Rage Against the Machine, Limp Bizkit, Alanis Morissette. Like, these people came, they were okay. They were protected. And they were treated like royalty.
Yeah.
At the event itself, which we talked about a little bit already.
It's so funny. I popped on Mad Max Fury Road earlier in the day yesterday before I watched this docuseries. And it was like the similarities. You had in the beginning, you have, I forget what the bad guy's name, the creepy looking guy in Mad Max Fury Road, who's up there at the top of this cliff, and he's like dumping water on the crowd, like a little splash for them, and they're all fighting over like a glass of water. And then I'm watching this and I'm like, this is the same shit. You have this massive wall. On one side, you have the artists walking around living like kings. On the other side of the wall, you have people leaning against that wall trying to get a little tiny bit of shade. They're all fucking dehydrated. They can't get any water. And then they're breaking water pipes to try and get any water, which meanwhile we find out it's contaminated later. No wonder these people were so fucking angry,
I know.
They had a right to be.
I know. There was no relief.
Yeah.
There was no relief there.
So Korn, there were some artists that didn't help the cause, but what did you expect? This is the side I'm on, where there was the main security guy that was interviewed in this. He saw how poorly this was planned, and then the bookings that they did. And it's like, you can't be mad at Korn or Fred Durst for being who they are. You knew what you were signing up for.
Yeah.
They're going to rile up a crowd even more. That's their job. That's what they do.
That's their job.
Yes.
That's what you paid them to do. You paid them to put on one of their shows. Well, that's what they did.
Yeah.
They came and put on one of their shows.
They're an angry style of music. Their crowd, their fans are angry, and their job is to get them riled up. And that's what Korn did on the end of day one, was just tear the roof off the place and get the crowd going. It seemed like they put on a hell of a performance, dude. Like, you got to hand it to them for what they do. Whether you're into the music or not, they put it all on the stage.
Dude, I loved Korn.
Yeah.
Early 2000s.
Yeah, they have some great songs.
Fucking Freak on a Leash.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some badass shit. But then Bush had to follow them.
Yeah. Poor Gavin Rossdale with his British accent comes on, and he's got to follow Korn after they just, like, made the crowd go insane. But you know what? From the footage I saw, he did a good job. Like, I mean, obviously he's a top-notch musician. He knows how to. There was this dichotomy where you'd have one performer come on, and maybe part of the issue was the lineup, as far as, like, you should have put certain artists before others. You should have had Korn finish. You can't have Korn go on and then have Bush go on after. You got to have Bush then Korn.
Well,
because the crowd was there to see the angrier. You want them to finish out the night. You know,
no doubt. But it was day one. So they weren't able to gauge the crowd. But honestly, if these producers of the thing, we're talking about Michael Lang and John, what was his name?
John Sure, yeah.
If these guys had any clue about these acts, that would have helped a lot. Or if they just fucking opened up their mind.
That is a good point. Like, they were literally looking at record sales, right? And they were going, well, this corny band, like, Korn, is that what it is? They got an R backwards. I don't know. I'm confused. They sell a lot of records. I think we should just get them. I mean, we're trying to make money here, right?
Who is this guy? Limp Cookie? Limp Biscuit? Why we'll put this guy on here? He does it all for the cookie or something? I don't know. Right. Yeah, that'll probably be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like your sheer ignorance. And Michael Lang started that. He was like, yeah, most of these bands, I had no idea who they were. Well, there's mistake number one.
Yep.
Mistake number one. You don't invite ICP, fucking Korn, and like all these bands, you don't even know who they are. That's you fucked up big time.
Yeah. Insane. Yep. And so the night one closes out with Bush kind of bringing the tone of the crowd down a little bit. I'm surprised he didn't get Gavin Rossdale didn't get ripped off the stage and torn apart by the crowd after Korn freaking came on and just got them all riled up. But he was able to bring the tone down a bit. Day one ended, like we said, day one went about as well as it could considering the circumstances, but things were only going to build from there because the amenities. Day two, by the next morning, you could see the extent of the poor planning. There was trash that you had to walk through a foot of to get anywhere, all over the tarmac. And by then, people had already probably spent most of the money that they had brought with them because everything was so expensive. And now they're living basically like they're in a third world country at that point.
Right. There were people laying in trash with signs that said, need water or whatever. Like, can you spare water? Can you, like, food, want water, want drugs, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, by day one, it's like, I get, like, day three, I could see, like, maybe you made some bad decisions. You're kind of burnt out. You lost everything. Worst case scenario, you have to go home. Right. But in day one, there was hardly anywhere to lay on the ground. Good luck making like a campsite, laying out a blanket or something. There was you would have to move trash just to move. Yeah, it was insane.
So day two, they're living basically in utter filth. There's the irrigation issues which are going on. By now, a pipe has been broken, and they've got a mudslide near the section of porta potties, which is clearly mixed with shit. And as it turns out, the water that was coming out of the pipe was mixed with shit to begin with. So it's just a big shit soup, if you will.
And clearly people did not know that.
No. There's, like you said, plenty of footage of people brushing their teeth with that water, drinking straight out of it. I think most of the people were drinking that because, like we said, you got to go spend $4 for a bottle of water. And then the price was going up as the days went on and there was less and less people. They just started charging whatever the fuck they wanted because they knew people would pay for it. And that's how shitty people get. Like, you got someone who's having a borderline heat stroke. They're dehydrated. They've been partying for 3 days, and you're going to double the cost of a water bottle for them. So, of course, people are just drinking whatever with water they can find. And all of it at the venue coming from the irrigation and from the water lines was all cross-contaminated with feces. So,
and I would say that the majority of the guests were probably under 20 years old.
mm-hmm.
So they're not bringing huge amounts of money with them.
They're not. Yeah, they're not. And we forgot to mention, coming into the venue, they took all water away from everyone. You weren't allowed to bring any water in.
Oh, yes, that was some fucked up shit right there.
Pure evil, right?
They took their food and their water. You couldn't even bring water bottles.
Meanwhile, everyone brought as many drugs in as they wanted. They didn't seem to do any regulating of that. There was ecstasy being handed out by everyone. There was dudes with giant buds of pot just like bragging about it and like selling weed just right out in the open.
Yeah, no big deal.
They could bring in a whole backpack filled with different drugs, but they couldn't bring in one little bottle of water. That was confiscated because, of course, they're charged. They got to make money off that.
Although I was looking at some of those nugs that they were holding up, it looks like some garbage weed, bro. In '99,
yeah,
they were probably like, "Look at this, get some of this Primo, bro."
Right,
shit looks like a pine cone, man.
It's all dried out.
It's improved so much. Like we're so spoiled now. The quality is so much more consistent.
I'd rather have that 69 weed where it was like fucking $5 for a giant sack, bro.
Yeah, but you have to smoke the whole thing to get high.
Well, that's fine for me. It probably wouldn't take me that much.
I'd be like,
for you could smoke 10 ounces of that
oregano? Shit. I know. I always laugh when people like in their 60s like, at your age I'd smoke 4 joints and go to work, and I'm like, yeah, but I mean,
I guess you could call that weed that you were smoking. I guess you could call it weed.
Yeah, right. Fucking oregano and shit you were smoking back then.
So, early day 2, we had Kid Rock during the day. Put on a show, get the crowd kind of riled up. But night 2,
American Badass.
Yeah, he showed up in a fucking fur coat. Oh, this is also day 2 is when the heat really kicked in. It was 100 degrees.
Yeah.
We're talking upstate New York, I believe, and it was still
humid as fuck,
and 100 degrees out, and people were just struggling already. Early day 2, people were already really fighting the heat, and then you have Kid Rock, and this just shows you how well they were being treated in the performer area, because he shows up wearing a fucking fur coat onto stage, because he just came out of his air-conditioned trailer. So
right,
he shows up in the fur coat, strips it off, and puts on a show.
I guess he had to do it though. I mean, it was kind of his whole thing at that time. He was like this
pimp daddy.
Like rock and roll pimp, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Like when he debuted in the late 90s, yeah, he had like this whole vibe.
I remember around this time, probably around 99, when I was like 12 years old, for Christmas, my parents got me a Kid Rock CD.
Right on.
I remember that vividly.
Was it the one where he's standing in like red neon?
Yes.
And it says like, dude, I love that album. I wore that album out when I was a kid.
That's what I'm saying. All these artists, dude, I was big into, and it was the 90s. You didn't have as many options.
The headliners,
you didn't have Apple Music. You could just go find new artists, or Spotify. It was like you were given what you were given.
Yep.
And that was that. Like my first CD that I ever had was Godsmack. That was like the first CD I bought with my own money. The one with the pale chick on the front, like the goth chick or whatever.
Yep.
That was my first, and we would mosh in my buddy's garage to it. We could be shoulder checking each other in there, and then it was System of a Down, Toxicity. I'm surprised System of a Down didn't play this one. Probably because they were very much against the corporatized bullshit, and they might have seen through the masquerade. Most of their songs were about that shit, about.
And honestly, I think you might be surprised at how young Godsmack was in '99. I don't think they were really. I mean, not Godsmack. Who'd you say?
System of a Down.
System of a Down, right? I don't think System of a Down was really hitting on all cylinders.
They were very close.
If
they weren't,
they were very close.
I was super into them in middle school, and that would have been the early 2000s.
Speaking of artists that were just getting their start, then we were looking at the list earlier, and we noticed Muse was on the list, which was as an emerging artist.
I didn't even know they were together as a band in '99, dude. That's so crazy, because they didn't really hit and get all over the radio until like 2010, something like that.
Yeah. They were nobodies in '99, basically. They were playing the emerging artist stage, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy. Same thing with Fatboy Slim. Technically, he was on the emerging artist stage at that time, too.
Yeah. So, rounding out day 2, the headliner for day 2 was Limp Bizkit. And we could talk for 30 minutes just about that.
Fred.
Bro, you get what you get
Durst.
when you
fucking...
When you book Limp Bizkit, you're going to get Limp Bizkit. What do you want?
Bro, it's like you can't knock him for not being genuine. He was always himself.
Yeah.
I mean, show me one interview where he was not himself. I mean, that motherfucker was just he was just
very
trashy
on
and didn't
brand
give a
all
fuck.
the time.
He just didn't give a fuck. And like what so many of the people in the audience said, they're like, he's like us. You know, he wears DC shirts and backwards hats. He's not a rock star. He just don't give a fuck.
Right.
And
meanwhile, how much do you think
embodied
DC was
whole...
paying him to wear those hats all the time? Just like they were paying Rob Dyrdek a fucking boatload of money to wear their shit constantly.
Oh, I know. I'm sure they were.
You know,
I don't know.
Like, he's not a fucking corporate sellout. Meanwhile, it's like he's wearing DC shit all the time. You know, he was taking massive checks from DC.
Yeah, he probably was.
100%.
Was. Yeah.
100%.
It fit the style. Like, it just fit his style.
At the very least, they were sending him like truckloads of shit. Like if they weren't sending him massive checks of cash, they were probably both.
Yeah. But can you blame Fred at that point?
No.
You know,
but
it's already stuff he likes to wear.
The hypocrisy. Like everyone loves him because he's not a corporate sellout, because he's not like NSYNC and all this shit. But it's like he's still taking massive checks from corporate entities, dude. He's still on MTV too, as well.
Yeah,
he's still like. How did you think you found him? He is a sellout.
Yeah.
At the same time, he's not just playing some little fucking bar, hole in the wall place and saying "fuck the man." I'm not going to take any checks from them. Like.
Right.
He just said the things you guys liked. He said the right things, but his actions were still taking massive checks from huge companies.
Yeah, and it's where he's from too. Like he's from very low income
from like
areas.
the Bronx or something like that.
No, he's born in Jacksonville, but he was actually raised in North Carolina.
Well, he always had the Yankees hat on, right? And I always thought he was like a
Yeah.
New York guy for whatever reason.
No, it was just Yankees hats were popular then, dude. You had Jay-Z and just everybody was making Yankees hats popular.
And his music videos, he's like walking around the streets in New York though with the big New York puffy jacket, you know, the big like it's cold outside jacket.
That might be where his studio was or whatever, but yeah, no, he was born in Florida, and then like I say, was raised in North Carolina. Went to high school in North Carolina and everything. Yeah. So, but very low income areas for sure. Very low. It makes sense when I know where he was raised. I know the town he was raised in, and yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I'm like, yeah.
So
that's a product of this town.
Day two, when during the set, Limp Bizkit, you could sense you get the vibe starts to change, and people start getting concerned that are working the venue. The sound tower, which was in the worst placed thing. Like the guys, there was like 10 people in this sound tower, which was right in the middle of the crowd. They were on an island basically with this ruckus crowd, and you have Fred Durst on stage playing a song called "Break Stuff," where he's talking about fuck everything and break shit because it makes you feel good and all that stuff. Yeah, and these guys are up in this tower looking down like, oh shit, this is not good. This is
not us, good. Not us. You know we're controlling the sound, right? You
break
know
anything else, please. Break anything but this tower. They actually had to evacuate these guys in this tower. They had to do like a literally a military evacuation. They had to force the people up at the front of the stage had to force their way through the crowd and get those people in the tower out of there because they could see the writing on the wall that people were starting to climb up into it and they were seriously at risk.
Yeah. Which is insane. And I know you were like, that's a terrible place to put it, but I mean, like,
that's where it has to go, right?
Sound, you have to be in the middle of the crowd in order to control the sound. Like, if you don't know what it sounds like in the middle of the crowd, what are you doing?
Fair enough.
So they had to be out there, but yeah.
But it had to be secured more than it was. Like it should have been a building. They should have put in an actual like brick building or something there. I don't know. Something that couldn't burn, that was sturdy, that you couldn't get into.
Just a cinder block and building.
Should have been like a little mini prison that
with a bulletproof glass window for them to look out.
Right.
It's a shame that they even had to consider that, though. Like, would you really think a peace and love concert would need this?
Yeah.
You know? Well, I mean, I would if I'd have saw the acts. I'd have been like, this is not a peace and love concert.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
This is a smash your face concert. So you might want to put some strong things on the grounds.
Yeah. So, yeah, Fred Durst did his thing. He got the crowd even angrier. That's his job, once again.
Yep.
You can't be mad at him. For even the head security guy at the venue said the same thing. He said, you can't be mad at, Limp Bizkit for doing Limp Bizkit's thing. You guys hired them to do that.
Yep.
So.
Yep. You would have been mad if he didn't show up and do that.
Right.
You know? Been like, what is this? What is this
you know what?
cheap-ass show you put on?
There's an argument to be made that the crowd would have been more mad had he not done that. Had he gone up there and tried to say some alternate message, they would have been like, fuck Fred Durst, this whole thing's a sham.
Yep.
And they might have burnt the place down the day 2 rather than day 3.
Yep. He's a fucking sellout too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I could see that happening.
Yeah.
No doubt. So are we into day 3?
No, actually, day 2, I forgot Fatboy Slim. The whole fiasco with Fatboy Slim show. He was later into the night. He actually closed out night 2, Fatboy Slim, and that's when things started getting real scary. So during Fatboy Slim show, he's up there. He's loving it. He said he loves the craziness. Chaos. He wants to be in the middle of the chaos. That's what he said. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's doing his thing, performing for this crazy crowd. And at this point, the crowd has gone from. It seemed like it was more angry during Limp Bizkit, but then it got more sexualized because he's more of a electronica. He's a DJ, one of the early really popular DJ guys. Yeah, he's standing up there with the headphones on and doing his thing. And at this point, everybody's handing out ecstasy. There's people fucking in the crowd left and right. What the one guy said, he said at one point he saw a wall, like against a wall, a row of people with their backs turned with people behind them. And he said you can use whatever biblical term you want for what they were doing. But basically, it was like an orgy going on.
Right.
And
that was in one of the overnight raves, I think.
Yeah. And so during Fatboy Slim's show, it's going well. He's in about the middle of his set. Things turn because they see these lights in the crowd heading toward the stage, and it turns out that a van had been commandeered and was being driven by someone who was incapacitated. They were so fucked up through a crowd. You can imagine how dangerous this is. Thankfully, this person was going like 1 or 2 miles an hour and didn't just floor it through a crowd of people. But it could have easily happened, as messed up as this person was. And there was people on top of the van dancing, and so Fatboy Slim has to cut his set short, which makes the crowd even angrier. He's trying to explain to them, it's not my fault. I want to keep playing, but I can't. They're telling me I have to stop. And when they finally get inside the van, they realize there's a 13-year-old girl, an underage girl in the floorboard of the passenger seat, undressed, clearly had been
passed out.
Yeah, clearly had been taken advantage of. And things are getting real dark at this festival at this point. And that's how night 2 ends. And you can imagine the whole tarmac and everything where this thing is being held, this whole venue is just getting nastier by the minute. There's more and more filth, trash. We forgot to mention the reason there's so much trash is because the sanitation department they'd had budget cuts, and they had to do like vendors. They had to do like second party vendors who were not doing their jobs. They hired like some second rate trash companies to come out there, and they weren't even doing anything.
Well, but because they agreed on an amount of service, and then they paid for the trash service and the food services and all this because they jobbed it out, right? But you get what you pay for. Yeah. And if you didn't pay for enough for 250,000 people, then they're not just going to be like, oh, well, let us just bring more amenities, even though you didn't pay for it. It's like, well, no, they're only going to do what you paid for. You didn't pay for enough. That's your problem. Like, you can't even blame these third-party people for coming in and doing what they had to do.
Yeah, the amount they probably got paid. They probably got, stiffed. They got given a very small amount of money, and then you're dealing with a massive place with 200,000 people and trash everywhere, and it's like, no,
right?
You didn't pay me for this.
Exactly, and you're serving a bunch of entitled people who feel like we paid money to be here and blah 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 and this and that.
Yeah, because there was the one lady that was going around with trash bags trying to get people to clean up, and they're like, "Fuck you! I paid $150 to be here. You clean up.
You clean up."
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's how it should be. I mean, the trash should be accounted for.
But that cut into their profit margin, dude. They didn't care if people were suffering and having a miserable existence while they were there. They were raking in cash with each dollar that they didn't spend on things like trash and proper hydration for the people that are tending, and food and all that affordable food. Like, they just truly didn't care, and the people could feel that. The people knew that they were being taken advantage of, and the people showed it as the festival progressed through the days. It just got more and more intense, and by day 3 they had Willie Nelson open, which is just so bizarre.
I know, with a hymn. With a hymn above all else. What did he sing? Amazing Grace or some shit? I'm like, wow, you're bringing out... I thought it was a tactic, right, to calm everybody down, but I guess it was planned from the beginning as kind of like their Sunday morning ritual. But yeah, that was awkward.
Yeah,
that was
awkward as well as like didn't they have like a monk tent? They had Tibetan monks on like basically somewhere in some tent at this place, which is so it's the bizarrety of the different worlds that are going on all in this one location. You got these monks in the
contrast.
tent while people are on ecstasy fucking right outside of the tent probably. And then they're swimming in shit outside of that.
Like, yeah, dude, the contrast was insane.
Yeah.
But you know what's crazy? You know what really baffled me was like Willie Nelson in 99, he looks exactly like he does now. He hasn't aged he still looks old as shit in 99, but he doesn't look any older in 2022.
Yeah, it's like Danny DeVito. Danny DeVito's got that thing going on. He's looked the same for 30 years. He's looked old as shit for 30 years.
Yeah, like Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
He's looked old since he was in his 20s. Now he just looks normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so day 3 in the morning, you have Willie Nelson playing, and as he's playing, you have kind of a mass exodus. The crowd was cut down significantly. I'd say they probably lost like 25%. They're down to they're down from 250 to probably a little under 200,000 at this point.
Yeah.
And it's ironic because as he's playing on the road again, up on stage, you see these cars of people fleeing, saying, you know, it's basically like a third world country in there. I'm tired of it. It's so filthy, and there's nothing to, there's no water, and I'm out of here. All the smart people left, and all the crazy fucks were left, which ultimately was probably worse because now you have a smaller crowd, but it's all the craziest motherfuckers left, you know,
right?
The ones that are willing to stay through this just absolute terrible circumstances.
Well, it's also important to note at this point that there were rumors going around that there was going to be a big surprise at the end of the festival.
Doesn't it make you wonder whether these guys were like evil geniuses and they were trying to intentionally cause mayhem? Because
I know, right?
It's like you look at all their actions, all their decisions, the lineup, and then doing things like this, intentionally leaking this concept that there was going to be this big headliner that no one knew about that wasn't on the announcements for the festival.
Yep.
They were putting out these rumors intentionally, getting the crowd more hyped up for something that they knew wasn't going to happen.
Indeed. But it made 3/4 of the crowd stick around, so it was pretty brilliant, I guess, because that's just that much more money you made. You made a whole day of money, and
businessmen make money at the expense of others, and they could care less about that as long as they make more money.
Exactly.
So you had Willie Nelson opening up. You had Jewel in the afternoon, and she said it was a very weird energy. It was unlike any show she's ever played, and you could see it. Like there was footage of her on stage, and it's just like the crowd is just not feeling her act at the moment. You know, she's an amazing artist, but it was not the right crowd for her at this stage in day 3 of this festival where everybody's fucking hungover, dehydrated, angry at the circumstances, and then she's up there singing her beautiful songs with an acoustic guitar, and it just didn't blend well. And so she did her set and got the fuck out of there, took her check and bounced. And these artists, like some of their teams of people were like, let's get out of here now. Get on the bus. We got bad vibes at this place. There's no need to stick around. Let's get you to safety.
Yep.
And then day 3, you had the headliner, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, up on stage. And you had Flea fully nude playing bass.
Fully nude,
just only the bass guitar blocking his dick most of the time, but plenty of shots of him jumping around with his schlong flopping around, which was fitting because half the crowd was naked at this point as well. So
yeah. And you know, you're the headliner and you're one of the biggest rock stars in the world in 99. It's like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And had to do something crazy.
I guess their big thing that they should have been putting out more accurate rumors, because everyone was thinking there was going to be this big headliner following the Chili Peppers. There was nothing planned for after them as far as an artist goes, but what they did have in store was the dumbest idea I've ever heard, unless you are intentionally trying to cause chaos. Especially when you've seen how the first 2.5 days of this thing have gone. You maybe should have just canceled this whole idea, but instead they went forth with it. Even after warnings from the fire marshal on site, they went ahead and handed out 100,000 candles to the crowd.
There you go.
With some matches or lighters, I suppose, to light them. They had to have a means to light them.
Oh, dude, don't play. Everyone there had a lighter.
Yeah. And this was because earlier that year, the Columbine shooting had happened, and this was supposed to be a candlelight vigil during the song from the Chili Peppers, Under the Bridge, which is kind of a lower, a lower tone vibe. It's kind of a
right. I get you. It's
kind of a sadder song.
Going. Right.
And it was actually beautiful initially, right? You had everybody that was there was like, we've never seen anything like it. You picture 100,000 candles at once burning during a song like Under the Bridge. And then you start seeing fires pop up. You see one massive fire at the back of the crowd, and from there it just became like a war zone. Fires everywhere. The crowd angrily throwing more and more tables and chairs and whatever they could find into the fire, just making it into the most massive bonfires you've ever seen. And it only got worse as they realized that there was no band coming on after the Chili Peppers. And actually, the organizers came up to, I forget who's the front man for the Chili Peppers?
Anthony Kiedis.
Anthony Kiedis. They went up to Kiedis and said, "You got to go out there and do an encore and try to settle this crowd down." And he's like, "Why is this my fucking problem? Like,
right?
I did my job. Because you guys poorly planned this thing and handed out fires to everyone. I got to go try and put this fire out." So what does he do? They go out there and they play a Jimi Hendrix cover, "Fire."
Of fire.
About fire. Let me stand next to your fire. Which very on brand for an artist to go out there and just side with the crowd and get them even more riled up and basically tell them essentially through a song to go ahead and light more fires.
Right. And this is the second time in the festival where a song fit the situation too well negatively. Like the first time being Limp Bizkit's Break Shit, right? Mm-hmm. While the crowd is already tearing shit apart. And then you play Break Shit. Right. Yeah. Great idea.
Yeah.
And then this one, right? There's fire showing up everywhere, and then you play a song, "Let Me Stand By Your Fire."
Yeah.
And they do it with gusto, too. It's not like they're embarrassed, like, "Oh, I wish we would have planned something else." They're like, "Nah, let me stand by your fire."
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, it just fed the fire, for lack of a better term.
And how is the crowd at this point not being shown confirmation for everything they do? You know, think about being in their shoes where it's like, you're kind of expected to not break everything and tear things down at a concert venue typically, but then you're there, you're being starved and dehydrated and overcharged for every single thing. And there's no shade and it's 100 degrees out and clearly the venue doesn't give a fuck about you. And then you have Limp Bizkit up there telling you to break shit. And then the next day you're handed candles with fires, and then you're told, "Let me stand next to your fire." It's just like everything that they're doing is just confirmed. Like, yes, keep going, make it worse. Yeah, this is great.
Exactly.
And there's no security, and what little security there is switching to your side, taking off their shirts and just jumping in on the madness. It's like we're doing the right things here. Yeah.
And they already got their $500. They're spending it there at the damn festival.
Yep. At this point, the fires are bursting up everywhere. MTV cast is fleeing. They're getting the fuck out of there. You're seeing their live broadcast and they're like, "I think we should get out of here. This thing is getting a little too crazy." Bombs are going off because they had trailers filled with gasoline and things like that caught fire, and those start exploding. So now you're literally in a war zone. There's explosions going on, massive fires everywhere. The speaker tower that we talked about earlier, that was torn down. It was eventually like enough people got on it that they were able to topple that thing over. And they're getting what few journalists were brave enough to stick around and go in there and get interviews for people got quotes like, "They're all about making money off of us and we're fucking pissed." And then the crowd starts then heading towards the vendor village where where the big money stuff is. There's tons of albums and basically only the elites were allowed into this prior, but they start heading like zombies towards different locations all at once. And then, the organizers are like, "We got to get the fuck out of here." They take over the vendor village. They start taking up whatever all the different goods that they could. Valuable.
They're like smashing ATMs.
Yeah. At one point, somebody yells out ATM, and then they just all swarm on the ATMs and start bashing those, trying to get money out of them. As we mentioned, the trailers with gasoline are exploding.
Yeah,
just absolute and utter mayhem.
Stealing merchandise from bands and everything else, dude. Just absolute chaos.
Absolute chaos, mayhem, until the state troopers show up, and finally the security gets a little help, and state troopers show up like stormtroopers, all geared up in their riot gear. Mm-hmm. They got their long batons, and they're just whacking people left and right, breaking up the party, and things finally settle down and come to an end. But by the next morning, there's footage of people driving around, and Warzone almost doesn't even describe it. It's like the worst battle, like Warzone you could imagine. Cars are upside down. There's, smoldering trailers, and then the trash is everywhere still, and it's just like you can't even imagine.
Like almost every vehicle that was used was burnt.
Yeah.
just absolutely set ablaze and nothing but a shell. It's amazing that nobody died. Like, did you ever? I didn't hear of any deaths. Did
really?
You?
I didn't look. I didn't like. Let's look that up because they didn't mention it in the. They did mention the fall. They mentioned the following days after this festival. Obviously, this thing got worldwide news coverage. How it happened, and the organizers started getting calls from mothers of underage girls that were reporting that their daughters had been raped.
Right.
And, all kinds of horrific things like that. Clearly, many women had been assaulted during this. There's endless footage of women being groped and they'd get thrown up to do. I don't even know if they were willingly crowd surfing or if they were being lifted and thrown up to crowd surf, and then they were just being groped by every fucking guy.
Yeah. It was kind of hard to tell.
Yeah.
Absolute chaos. But yeah, check and see if there's any deaths.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, if there was, they glazed over it. So, oh no.
3 people died during the festival. 2 people died from drug overdose, and 1 from being run over by the driver of a tractor who did not notice the man sleeping under a sleeping bag.
Oh
Holy
my
shit.
God.
So they stole a tractor and ran a guy over. But like you said, though, I'm still amazed that only 3 people died. That seems really low when you see the footage of this absolute chaos. Like, towers being tipped over. I couldn't believe no one died when that fucking tower went over. That thing was massive.
That's what I was going to say.
I thought there was a guy on top. No?
There were people on top.
Yeah.
I swear to God there were.
Yeah.
And when that thing fell over, I'm like, how does that guy not die?
Right.
Like, that's a 40-foot drop or so.
Yeah, I can only imagine how many tons that thing weighed. That thing was a massive structure.
Maybe as it fell, people caught it kind of like as a crowd and it broke the fall.
No, it hit the ground hard. You could see it in the video. There's no way.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know how somebody on that tower would have survived that fall. But maybe they just got really bad injured.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Insanity.
Crazy, dude.
Insanity. Did you ever have how many music festivals have you gone to? Because I can say for sure that I went to a few music festivals in the 90s, and they definitely had this dark vibe to them. I went to Extreme Thing, which was held yearly during the early 2000s at Desert Breeze Park in Vegas, and it was massive. Like, obviously nowhere near the scale of Woodstock, but there was thousands of people there, and there was massive bands that played it every year, like System of a Down and things like that.
Yeah.
And I went to it several years, and there would be massive brawls and tear gas thrown into the crowd. There was one year, I'll never forget this, where this group of skinheads took over the crowd, and they took over the mosh pit, and they were basically standing in the middle of the mosh pit and just fucking up anybody that walked in. They would jump them and beat the shit out of them. And there was like 5 or 6 of these massive fucking skinhead dudes, and they were scary as shit. And like, there was a couple of guys that were brave enough to go in there and take them on, but no one backed them up. And then they would just get beat down by these guys. It was super messed up.
Damn. No, I don't have any experiences like that, dude. But like I said, I didn't grow up in Vegas.
The 90s was the era of the just angry music, man.
Right. But I mean, Vegas is also like a festival central. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. There's always festivals going on. There's always all these opportunities. Whereas, like, I've been to some concerts, I've been to different venues, stand-up only venues that were really tight, and things kind of felt like, ooh, you don't want to fall down in here. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to get trampled. But other than that, I never had nothing. I never experienced anything that was like Woodstock, where I felt like I was really in fear for my life. I always felt like, if this got crazy, I could leave. Like I've been to a few outdoor venues. Like Charlotte has, I can't remember what it's called right now. It used to be called Verizon Wireless Amphitheater, and it's a great venue to go see concerts because it's outdoor. And then the grounds go up as you go, and you can get like lawn tickets, and you kind of like have your space and whatnot. But it's way more controlled. It's not just open and standing area everywhere. But
yeah,
no, man, I ain't never. That's not my scene, man. I would not be having fun at a festival like that. I would not be having fun at all. Even day one, I would have been like, nope, time to go. This is not good, man. I pay attention to my intuition. I'm dipping.
Even when you were like 17, though? See, like I was like 17 at the time, and I loved it. It was amazing.
I think more so.
Me and my buddy were in the mosh pit. We were like, I remember us coming out with like teeth marks on our elbows and stuff. Like we were bigger dudes, like football players, and a lot of the people that attend concerts all the time are like smaller, skinny people, and like we were in there just like going crazy.
Yeah. I feel you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I think even at 17, I still don't think it would have been
not your thing.
Would have been something I really enjoyed. Yeah, not so much. I enjoy rocking out. I enjoy playing music. I like being on stage, but being in mosh pits and shit, nah, thanks,
dude.
man.
The footage. What was it? What's his name? Jonathan, whatever from Slipknot, the head man.
Yeah.
He was talking about and they showed the footage of him walking out on stage. Like, he says unlike better than any drug or anything.
Oh no, that was the lead man of Korn.
Yeah. Sorry, Jonathan, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yep. I know it's not the intoxication. That's why you can't blame those acts. You can't blame those acts for feeding off that energy when that is the energy that they feed off of.
They had 200,000 people eating out of the palm of their hand. I can only imagine the thrill and the adrenaline rush you get from that. Like every word you say, like Fred Durst, you could see, I loved how the guy described it, how his egos were battling with each other. It's like, don't say it, Fred, and then he just says it.
Don't do it, Fred. Don't do it.
You could see it in his eyes. He's walking around drunk on the power of that, dude. Like, he was becoming Hitler in front of our eyes. It was insane.
Like I said, you took a guy that came from nowhere, man, and gave him all that power. He's gonna fucking abuse that shit.
Nuts.
It's crazy.
Absolutely insane. I hope you guys enjoyed. I was breaking down this crazy docu-series talking about Woodstock 99. If you haven't seen it, check it out.
Yeah.
Very well done. Netflix is not dead, man. I know there's a lot of competition, but they still put out amazing content on a regular basis. Like, I wouldn't cancel my subscription. They still put out really good original shows, movies, documentaries like this. So
yeah, they're hanging in there. It is a 3-part docuseries, which I was unaware of.
They're about 45 minutes a piece.
Yeah. I thought it was going to be hour and a half, one episode. But no, it's 3 episodes, 1 episode for each day, which is really nice.
Yeah, it's cool how they did it.
But still, looking at this list, they left out so much. I would love to have seen the Rage Against the Machine set,
what happened with that, right? Because
the
crowd
Offspring,
was...
Or DMX. DMX was there.
Oh, man, how did he deal with the crowd? He had to have gotten them fired up, too.
Exactly.
But it is crazy that they left the Rage set out, because that was, I think, the crowd identified with Rage's message more than anybody, and you could see that when they started heading to the vendor tents, they were literally chanting, "Fuck you, we won't do what you tell me."
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, where was the Rage set? Maybe nothing. Maybe Rage just had a normal concert. Maybe all the rage of the crowd was contained with them, and they kept it under control, and nothing crazy happened. But I just can't imagine that. I feel like if anybody wants to stick it to the man, it's fucking Rage Against the Machine. It's in the damn name.
Yeah.
But right on, dude. I was really shocked when you sent me this case, honestly, earlier this week. I was like, really? Woodstock?
So the way that went down, shout out to my coworker, Isaac. I don't think he's a patron. I don't think he listens to the podcast at all, but he was just, he watched this documentary, and we were sitting around at work near the end of the day, and he was just going on, dude. He just broke this whole thing down. He was like, he was made such a compelling case about, how good this docuseries was. And he's like, dude, you got to watch all this crazy shit happen. And I'm like, fuck it. Let's just do this as an episode. It sounds crazy enough. There we go. And so I'll send him the episode, tell him to listen to it. So shout out Isaac for sure.
Right on. Appreciate it, dude. Speaking of shout outs,
ready
to get into some shout outs of some other patrons?
We owe many of you patrons.
Yes, sir.
Of our festival here, the Festival of Patreon, a shout out.
I say let's go all the way back to July 9th.
Okay.
I think that should
start with Josie Thompson.
Yeah. All right. You want to start it off?
Sure. All right. We'll go. Thank you to everyone who signed up for Patreon, new and old patrons. Obviously, the new ones get a shout out here. We got Josie Thompson, Heather Whitry, Lori Ordway, Lauren Birch, Stacy Stanley, Feather and Whimsy, Jen M, Nikki Howell, Maggie Lumsden, Carrie L, Stephanie Klinger, Adam Black, Raul Marquez, Tammy Ecott, Brianna Allegra, and I'll let you take over.
All right. Also, a big thank you to Aisha Fody, Diana Herrera, Melissa Bradbury, Susan Wheeler, Braden Hay, Shauna Anderson, Lacey Hale, Andrew McIntyre, Julie Klosky, Cayman Freeman, Alicia Delgadillo. I think I got that one.
Delgadillo.
Alicia Delgadillo. Adam Lapping, Robert Page, Amy, Shelly Jackson, Silly Stone, Holly Macaris. Holly Macaris. You want to finish it up?
Casey Miller.
2 more.
Casey Miller, Jez, Shonda, Anna Sucks, and Laura Heslin. Why do you suck, Anna? That can't be your last name.
That just can't be your last name.
Maybe she just wanted to get a double shout out. It's a good way to get it if you just are self-deprecating.
Yeah, just put up a funny name in general, right. like a Bart Simpson type of play.
Yeah, Harry Balzania.
Yeah. Right on, guys. Well, we appreciate it. You guys are the wheels of the podcast. Thank you, guys. I hope you're enjoying all the content. If you're on the $2 tier, I hope you guys will consider the $5 tier. And well, yeah, you would be hearing this on the $2 tier.
Yeah, but you're not. You wouldn't hear the Just the Banter that we're about to record right after this.
That's right. Where we're going to talk about some case suggestions that we should have done already. Yeah. Apparently.
Yeah.
So that should be fun.
100%.
All right,
everybody. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And we'll see you next week for a freeloader episode. And if you're a $5 tier member, we'll see you for Just the Banter as well.
Yep, on Friday.
All right, everybody, keep creeping.
See you guys. Keep creeping.
You hush your mouth, boy.